The Wolf at Hollow Creek. Subscribe for more horror stories every day. I reached the town at dusk, headlights low, engine ticking. The road ended in gravel and a narrow bridge over a black stream. Pines rose like ribs on both sides. The sky was bruised and heavy, as if rain had teeth. I told myself I would not stay. I parked anyway. The cabin sat above the creek. Old porch, one bare bulb, a keypad on the door, and a horseshoe nailed upside down above the frame. The host texted a code and nothing more. No welcome, no warning. The porch smelled like damp wood and smoke that never left. I typed the code, the lock gave. Wind slid through the trees and found the cracks in the boards. It moved like breath. Inside, the floor slanted. Dust turned in the window light. A wood stove crouched in the corner like a patient animal. On the wall, a county map was pinned with a rusted knife. A river line curved like a spine. Beside the map lay a cloth bundle. Someone had wrapped it tight and tied it like a secret. I should have left it alone. I unwrapped it. A bell. Small. Heavy. Tarnished black except for a bite of silver worn bright on the rim. A horsehair cord was knotted to the tongue. A single crescent was carved on the handle. Thin, mean, more scar than moon. I set it down. It did not ring. Still, a hush passed through the room, as if the air had taken a step closer to listen. Outside, the creek talked to stones. The wind found the seams and whistled like teeth. I locked the door. I told myself I would shower, sleep, and leave at first light. I told myself I believed that. I had almost slept when I heard it. Not a dog, not a coyote. A long sound dragged over gravel. Old, hungry, patient. The horseshoe trembled on its nail. The bell leaned toward me without moving. The sound climbed, stalled, and fell like it had noticed my breath and wanted it. Midnight. The porch bulb died. The creek sounded thicker, as if something large had rolled over beneath it. No bars on my phone. My face floated in the screen, a fraction late. I killed the light and stood at the window. Two pines, close together, made a dark frame. A shape stood between them, tall, thin, wrong. It turned its head and found me through the glass. I could not see its body, only eyes, pale coins under mud, set too far apart. The porch boards creaked. I froze. The bell on the table quivered. The cord swayed. The carved crescent seemed to tilt toward the door. I took the stove poker from its stand. It felt hot and cold at once, as if fever haunted the iron. The knob twisted, not mine, slow, curious. The lock held. Silence stretched and thinned. Then a knock, gentle, polite, 3 times. On the third, it said my name. Not loud, not human. My name, pulled out of me like a loose thread. The bell gave a small, strangled ring. The horseshoe shivered and settled. Footsteps retreated down the path. I should have stayed away from the door. I opened it a crack. Air slid in, cold and careful. The night had a faint glow. A shaved moon dusted over the ground. Mud slicked the steps. Prints crossed the porch. Not boots, not bare feet. Pads, long and narrow. Claws had dragged slow and deep. The trail came from the door and went to the creek. The bridge moaned. The creek hushed itself. I told myself it was wind. The wind stopped. The bell behind me rang once, low, final, like a promise made by something that never breaks promises. I shut the door and braced it with a chair. I sat on the floor with the poker on my knees and watched the gap under the door until gray light found it. Morning made the trees look closer. The clouds were a low wall. The map's river looked darker than it should. The bell sat quiet, dull, like it had stayed awake when I did not. I packed. I put the key on the table. I reached for the bell without meaning to. The silver rim stung my finger. Not heat, not ice. A cold bite from a small old mouth. I dropped it. It did not fall. For a breath it clung to my skin, then let go as if satisfied. I went into town for coffee and a signal. The diner was called Pines and Pies. The sugar pies in the case looked like the surface of a still pond. The sheriff's photo on the wall smiled the way people do when they know something you won't like. The waitress had a name tag that read Lucy in peeling letters. Her hands shook when she poured. "You're up by Hollow Creek," she said, not asking. She glanced at my hands. "You touch anything you shouldn't?" "A bell," I said. "Found it in the cabin." Her mouth tightened. She leaned close. Her whisper felt like a roll. "If you hear it, don't look. If you see it, don't speak. If it speaks, don't answer. If you answer, you belong." She straightened and left me alone with the coffee. An old man in a booth watched me over the rim of his cup. Army coat, silver pendant shaped like a broken ring. He tapped it, counting maybe. "Bell marks you," he said as I passed. "Marks you so it can find you in the water and in the trees." "What is it?" I asked. "Aware?" He smiled without warmth. "Aware," he said, "of what was and of what will be. It wears every choice a man ever buried and every hunger a wolf ever taught itself to sharpen. The bell calls. The creek carries." He slid a few bills under his plate. "Leave at noon. Don't look down when you cross. And if your voice is outside your mouth, keep your mouth shut." I told myself I would leave at noon. I drove back to the cabin. Clouds stacked like bruises. The creek had a higher sound. I tossed my bag into the car and turned the key. The engine coughed and died. The second try was worse. The third try did nothing at all. The bell sat where I'd left it, patient. I took it outside. I walked to the bridge. I held the bell over the rail, intending to drop it and be done. The water below was milk dark and slow. It had a skin. It had an eye. It showed me my face like a mirror. The reflection smiled before I did, and the smile had too many teeth. "Give it back," a voice said. Mine, not mine. It came from the water, from the trees, from the empty road behind me. "You rang for me. Give it back, and I will be gentle." I stepped away from the rail. The bell tugged toward the creek like a magnet that had decided to be a hand. The bridge thudded once, something heavy against its ribs. I ran. The path led wrong, deeper into pines that swallowed sound. Sap and iron filled the air. My name threaded through the branches, pulled tight, and tugged me left, then right, then closer. It was a breath at my ear, a promise I did not make. The path opened on a clearing. In the center stood a stone well, low, wide, a lid of rotted boards. Moss wrote words I could not read. The air was colder. The bell went still in my hand. I set the bell on the well. "Take it," I said. "I don't want it." Wind rose without moving the trees. The lid shifted. A black hand, long and thin, slipped through the gap. Too many knuckles. It touched the bell with slow affection, then withdrew. The boards settled. The forest breathed. I believed for one heartbeat. Then came the smell. Blood, old and sweet. A taste behind the tongue. A laugh like a low engine turned by hand. It rose behind me, and a shape stepped out of the shade. taller than a man, shoulders wrong, one higher than the other, as if the bones had learned pride in being broken. Fur black as sap, wet over ribs. The head was more wolf than man. The eyes were moons wearing the memory of a man who once waited at a door. Its mouth opened and a rope of red unwound. It smiled like it remembered how. "I can be gentle," it said in my voice, "but I don't like to be." I backed up. The poker was an insult in my hand. The creature listened with its whole body. It took one step, and the sound of the forest wrapped its ankle, eager to help. "Why me?" I asked. I did not mean to give the question away. "Because you looked," it said. "Because the bell touched you and you let it. Because something in you wanted a reason to stay in a place built for leaving." I swung the poker. It struck and rang like a church bell. The creature did not flinch. The bell on the well chimed back, low and sweet, as a lullaby that knows how it ends. A shout cut the clearing. "Run!" Lucy stood at the trees, gunshot braced. The old man from the diner limped beside her with a bundle of iron spikes. "To the car," he said. "Do not look back." I ran. Behind me, the gun roared. The creature laughed. Its footfalls landed like paws, and then like hands, and then like both. The bell rang in little relentless beats, counting the distance between my fear and its patience. The cabin broke the trees. The car door opened. The engine caught on the second try, howling like it had been waiting for its cue. In the mirror, I saw Lucy reload with fast, angry hands. Saw the old man drive a spike through the bell's handle and slam another through the boards of the well. The creature stopped at the edge as if it had reached the end of an invisible chain. I drove over the bridge. The creek kissed the doors. The pines let me pass as if they had been paid. Grasslands opened. The sky sagged. I drove until the town was a bruise behind me, and the gaslight sighed on. At a rest stop, I tried to breathe like a person. Rubber, coffee, rain. On the bulletin board, a flyer showed a missing boy. Pale eyes. A pendant like a broken ring. The date was yesterday. My phone found a bar. I opened maps. Hollow Creek did not exist. The river line had moved. My reservation still showed the cabin. The host still said nothing. A new message arrived from an unknown number. A single crescent, drawn with a shaky hand. Not a moon, a scar. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and share. New horrors await every week. Rain began as I reached the highway. The wipers knocked time on the glass. On the shoulder, a black dog stood and watched me pass. Pale eyes. A smile full of practice. It did not move. It did not need to. The bell's echo rolled under the engine. Soft, patient, counting. I told myself I was done with Hollow Creek. I told myself names can't summon what I won't answer. I told myself the mark will fade like an old bruise if I never touch it again. The road curved toward another bridge. Not the same, the same. Rain braided the air into strings. I slowed. The creek below rose with the weather, but the water had the stillness of a held breath. Halfway across, something lifted from the flood. Not water, not anymore. A hand found the guardrail. Long fingers, too many joints. The silver rim of a bell glinted in the gutter, nestled in leaves like a found coin. The radio cleared. A voice like mine said, "You brought it back." That was polite. Headlights caught fur tight to bones. A grin taught by mirrors. Eyes layered like windows opening one after another. The creature stepped onto the bridge. The bridge did not complain. It had learned compliance. I braked without choosing to.
The car idled like a held animal. The bell lay in the rain, patient. My phone buzzed. A location pin blinked where I sat, as if the host had always been watching from just ahead. I opened the door. Cold lifted the hair on my arms. I picked up the bell. It did not sting this time. Familiar, warm as something meant for my hand. The creature tilted its head, pleased, waiting the way a dog waits when it knows the trick and loves the treat. I raised the bell so the rain could see it. I thought of Lucy's shaking hands and steady aim. I thought of the old man's broken ring. I thought of the boy on the flyer and the date that refused to be old. I thought of the upside-down horseshoe and the way it trembled when the night introduced itself. The creek breathed. The engine idled. I chose. I rang the bell.
The bell of Blackwood Bridge, an old bridge over a dark river, a lost backpack, a bell that rings without wind. Emily ignores the warnings, reads a name scratched in metal. Footprints appear on wet planks. The river calls. The moon won't rise. Something waits in the fog. I reached Ravenswood before midnight, fog covering the road and Blackwood Bridge like a hospital sheet. I came to find my brother's missing phone. His last signal came here. I stopped by the crooked sign. The letters looked bitten by rust. The river made no sound. The first warning was a note taped to the rail. Do not ring the bell. The writing rushed, childish. I laughed, a dry sound. The bell hung mid-bridge, small, black, scratched like vines. Beside it, a blue backpack soaked. My brother's. Inside, wallet, a swollen notebook, and a photo of us in Brighton Park. The notebook repeated one line. If it rings, answer. I asked the dark, answer what? Wind stood still. I touched the bell. The metal smelled of old rain. A low sound, deep, like an animal's sigh. The river answered with a perfect circle in black water. My phone buzzed with no message. The screen flashed. The reflection showed a figure behind me. I turned. No one. On wet boards, footprints too long for a man, too big for a dog. The bell swung by itself. Second toll, deeper, inside my bones. On the arch, chalk words. When it rings 3, turn. 2 rings gone. I threw the backpack in the car, stayed on the bridge. The third toll came silent, only vibration. My vision darkened. I turned. Fog shaped a tall figure. The bell now at my chest, though I hadn't moved. The figure's face was blank glass, a mouth opened wrong, horizontal. The voice came from under the boards. Emily. I ran to the car. The key refused. Engine clicked dead. Lights blinked like a failing heart. Radio turned on. Static. A word between noise. Stay. In the mirror, the bridge stretched longer, the bell heavier. In the backpack, I found a silver key, chipped tooth. From our childhood lake house long sold. Why did he bring it? The notebook held one dry page, a map, 3 circles, an X on bridge center. Below, do not look at the water. I obeyed. For an hour, or a minute, time glued. The third toll still vibrated in my teeth. Someone wrote on windshield, turn. I turned. The figure sat on the hood, weightless smoke. The wrong mouth opened. Stay. I stepped out. The figure drifted back to the bell. The bell rang again. From the river, half a face rose. My brother's, stretched, water falling from eyes. M. He reached. Skin rippled. I knew the rule. 3 tolls. One answer, one request. The figure pointed to the bell. I understood late. I had to answer. My throat dry. I thought of the lake house, nights we swore not to talk to water. I smiled at our childish courage. I said, I stay? The bridge accepted. The river opened a straight line. Grass bowed as if something passed beneath. My brother's face smiled wrong and sank, step by step. The bell fell silent, the air heavy. Dashboard clock read 3:03, radio dead. I sat until fog tired. When moon rose, the bridge shortened, the bell shrank. I drove away. In the mirror, a shadow sat on the rail, feet over water. Faceless head tilted, grateful. Maybe I said wrong. Maybe stay means more here. I returned the backpack to my mother, lied. At night, the silver key appeared on my nightstand. I bit it, tasted rust. Clock blinked 3:03, then dark. Eyes closed, and Blackwood Bridge stretched before me again, ready. If you turn at 3 tolls, you'll see me. Don't speak my name. The water learns fast.
The Wolf on Millstone Road. I arrived at number 17 on Millstone Road as the lamps woke in the rain. Cambridge streets narrowed to brick corridors. Windows watched with the blank attention of old cities. The cab left before I reached for my wallet. The driver's hands shook on the wheel. He said, without turning, "Door's temperamental." Then he was gone. The gate shrieked across wet stone like metal taught to mimic pain. I stood with my suitcase and felt the hour lean forward on me. The lion knocker wore a skin of cold even in summer. 3 parallel scratches bit across its ring, clean and deep, spaced like fingers that ended in knives. The agent had warned me to use the bell. I did. The lock clicked as if clearing its throat. The door opened an inch and waited for permission. The hallway was long and thin, a rib cage of plaster and shadow. A narrow runner led away into weak light, arcing left with the first of many turns. A mirror hung opposite the entry, tall and foxed around the edges. Through its glass I saw the fanlight, the street, and the leaning lamps. Not me. I lifted my hand. The reflection fluttered, caught up, and then returned to ignoring me. From upstairs came a small movement. Wood thinking about a foot. Chair leg dragged 1 inch. The kind of sound that asks a second to follow. "Hello?" I said, out of a habit that didn't belong to me anymore. The pipes in the wall filled. Air went somewhere it had no business going. In the rush, a syllable formed and broke. L. Not my name. Almost. The near miss made my throat dry. The parlor waited with the hush of a room not spoken in for years. White sheets hid furniture like shrouds. I uncovered a chair and dust rose in spirals, folding in on itself like exhausted wings. On the mantel, a photograph leaned forward in its cracked frame. A man and a woman faced the camera with the stiff posture of old resolving times. Their faces were blurred by a finger-wide smear that traveled straight down. Someone had tried to rub them away. 4 long soot strokes and 1 short framed the picture, as if a hand had practiced the same motion again and again until the shape of claws became inevitable. In the grate, a lip of ash smelled faintly sweet, like flowers that never learned how to die. The pendulum clock beside the photograph froze at 11:11. Its brass tongue rested against its teeth, as if biting back a word. I set the keys on the mantel. They slipped toward the center by the width of a coin and stopped. I told myself the mantel was crooked. Then I crouched to pick up a loose thread and found not thread but a single hair, black and coarse, curved like a fishhook, thicker than any hair I had ever seen. I held it up to the window and lost sight of it in the glass. The mirror across the hall watched the movement without me in it. It studied the street and the lamps and the rain. It studied the door. It did not study me. The kitchen kept its back to the rest of the house, square, utilitarian, with an old ceramic sink and a small, stubborn window. The glass bore the fingerprints of a stranger from the inside. When I wiped it with the sleeve of my coat, the fog cleared and immediately returned. On the cold surface, the suggestion of letters pressed out from nothing. I stepped closer. The trace was not a word yet, more the ambition of one. A first attempt laid an invisible breath. I reached out with my own finger and drew a single circle. The pipes coughed. Somewhere deep in the house, a half-stifled laugh answered. Rain slowed. Evening deepened. I carried my bag upstairs, and the stairs accepted each foot as if measuring me. On the middle door of the landing, tallies were carved into paint. 5 lines crossed by a diagonal, repeated to shoulder height, then higher, and to a reach I could not match. The grooves felt warm. Behind that door, a nursery that did not belong to any child I could name. Blue curtains limp in stale air, a crib, old, a mattress buckled with the memory of weight. Over it, a mobile of tin moons and wolves turned as if a small breeze had learned to keep its secrets. I leaned close. The wolves wore nail scratches on their bellies, as if something reached up from the crib and tried to catch them. The mobile slowed, stopped. A breath left the mattress and a sound like a lung surrendering. My hand lifted the blanket. My hand found nothing it wanted to hold. In the ceiling, a square hatch hung from a string darkened with old water. I pulled. The ladder unfolded the way apologies do, reluctant, noisy, useless. The attic smelled of old suitcases and cold iron. Boxes weighted with the patience of things that have already outlived their owners. I opened an album. The house posed for photographs across decades, and always the same clock watched from the edge of the frame. In several, a woman with a crooked smile stood beside the mantel. The smear cut through her each time with the same obedient line. At one corner, the paper had been gnawed by a mouth that took its time. Behind the album lay a paper envelope so cold it felt wet. A silver key slid into my palm with the weight of a promise I could not remember making. I heard the first scrape across the roof. Not a branch. Something padded and deliberate, exploring angles a person would not choose. The pipes filled again. In their rush, a gentler syllable formed and held. Ethan. This time right. The clock downstairs ticked once without moving. A nail topped inside bone. The hotch rope trembled between my fingers, though the air was still. I climbed down too quickly and nearly missed the floor.
The scorched portrait above the fireplace hid a shallow cavity. I discovered it because the photograph had tilted an inch to the left as if to point. Inside the hollow sat a wooden box the size of my palm, with a slit narrow as an apology. The silver key fit without being shown how. The lid rose with theatrical caution. A ring lay in a bed of dark velvet, gold dulled by hard use, engraved on the inside with letters that were both mine and not mine. E. Ward. I had never owned such a ring. When I tried it, the band found my finger with the precision of something returning to its place. It refused to come off until I wet it under the tap. The water arrived brown, cleared, and then tasted of iron. On the kitchen window, a new word began to write itself from the inside out. M-O-O-N. The letters were simple and patient. The room cooled further with each curve. I stepped back, and my reflection stepped back late. In the mirror across the hall, movement caught where none should be. Paw prints tracked across the tiled entryway. The tiles themselves did not agree. They stayed unmarked. The mirror insisted. It always had more to say than the room would admit. I called my mother. The line answered with breath and a second voice behind hers that said my name too close to the microphone. Ethan. Then the call failed. The screen held a frozen image of me for a heartbeat, except the eyes were wrong. The iris had narrowed to a yellowed oval that reflected more light than it gave back. I threw the phone onto the sofa and did not want to pick it up again. The clock struck once, even though its hands had not moved. In its note, I heard metal teaching itself to howl. I went to the landing. The tallied door had accumulated more marks. I had not left long enough for anyone to carve them. I opened it to the nursery again, and this time the mobile moved without wind, faster than before, wolves circling like a pack that had forgotten the shape of stopping. I pressed the mattress. It gave under my hand in a shape exactly like a small rib cage, then flattened with a gasp that did not come from my throat. I stepped away too quickly, and my shoulder brushed the doorframe. On the wood where my sleeve had passed, 3 fresh grooves waited. They were not in the paint a moment earlier. From the roof came a weight. It crept to a place above the front hall, paused, and pressed down. The ceiling bowed very slightly, plaster complaining in a sift of fine dust. The lion knocker lifted and fell once. No one waited on the step. The second impact shook the letters on the window. N trembled and then held. The house listening. Me listening back. Between us, something else breathing with a patience that felt timed to a hidden clock, to a moon behind clouds cautious as a held tongue. Night ripened. Wind stopped. Sound traveled farther in the new stillness. Somewhere beyond the terrace, where Cambridge forgets itself and grants fields back to dogs and ruin, a howl began without hurry. It scaled roofs, ribs of chimney, clean lines of college stone, and found Millstone Road as if it had held a map of my name. It did not fade with distance. It folded around the house like a coat set gently on shoulders. The mirror finally admitted me again, but my reflection blinked slower than my eyes did. I lifted my hand and watched the shadow of a second hand delay, then align, then remain a second too long. In that extra second, the eyes kept their yellow. I tried the front door. The key bent and snapped, its halves ringing on tile. A small laugh moved through the pipes the way breath moves through a flute. The portrait cleared further. The woman who had once smiled crooked now looked almost ready to speak. A thin scar arched over her left brow. I traced the line on my own face and found the same memory. 12, running in a wood behind a cousin's house, tripping on a stone that smelled like wet fur. The moon had been low and red that night. My blood had felt longer in my body afterward, like rope. The hidden seam between the bookcase and the wall became obvious because I had decided to stop refusing it. The silver key dragged at my pocket, heavy as an order from a court that no longer existed. The lock turned with satisfaction. The door opened to a corridor too narrow to be lawful. Plaster brushed my shoulders. My breath left my mouth as visible cloud. At the far end, another door waited under the weight of tallies. 3 deeper gouges cut through them, spaced too far for fingers. The marks reached the height of my collarbone and then stopped, as if their maker had lowered its hand to listen at the wood.
The room beyond was a replica of my childhood bedroom drawn by a witness instead of an occupant. The map of England pinned crooked, the chair by the window in the wrong place, the crib too small for any child I had been. A woman sat in the chair, the woman from the portrait, only less blurred because the room had decided to be kind for a moment. Her eyes followed me from under a soft fringe of hair that might once have been human. She smiled without showing teeth. My mind supplied them anyway. Long, built for tearing, patient as winter. Ash dusted her fingernails. On the 3rd finger of the left hand, the ring fit my ring finger better than it fit hers. She looked past me at the door and tilted her head, listening high, the way wild things listen when they have already chosen their answer. I asked, "What do you want?" The house answered in parts. The mirror mouthed, "Return." The pipes whispered, "Stay." The roof did not speak. It held its breath the way rivers do when bridges lean across them. Far away the howl returned and did not approach so much as unfold. It arrived on every surface at once. The lion knocker dropped once, then again, then paused as if waiting for me to supply the 3rd. My chest understood a rhythm it had not been taught. I lifted the window latch. Cold climbed in a straight line.
The yard lay empty, but in the hall mirror the tiles tracked paw prints that never touched the floor. Shadows gathered at the baseboards. Thin hair, black, coarse, drifted from nowhere and clung to my sleeve. The clock struck, still at 11:11. And now I heard two tones braided, metal, throat. The woman's head turned toward the sound with a slow reverence. The scar above her brow twitched. I remembered the way my own wound had ached before storms. I remembered running under trees while the world tasted like iron. The memory did not end where it had always ended. It kept running. I closed the hidden door and leaned my back against it. The corridor pressed my shoulders and measured my lungs. The house felt like a body with me inside as a swallowed thing that had not yet been digested. I followed the hall to the front again, and the mirror followed me late. My reflection's mouth hung open the way mouths do when they are learning a new shape of breath. On the window, the word moon blurred and sharpened as condensation failed and returned and failed again. The pipes widened their vowels until the whisper of my name softened into something longer, something that did not end where human mouths end. I spoke to the air the way one speaks to a sleeping animal. I know you. The house did not deny it. Wind returned, not outside, inside. It moved through the stair spindles and stirred the white sheets until furniture breathed in its sleep. The lion knocker lifted with no hand to teach it and fell gently, like a promise being kept with care. I saw movement in the glass of the mirror, not mine. Shade. Height wrong for a person, shoulders wrong, weight placed heel to toe in a way that said heels and toes were not the issue. The woman in the chair rose without the small noises chairs usually ask for as payment. She walked to the window and stared at the letter O until it wept. Her hand lifted and turned in a gesture I remembered from my mother without understanding why. She pointed at the street. I did as pointed at. I watched the fan light, the lamps, the rain that had returned just enough to hide mistakes. Through the glass, I saw a shape in the streetlight's halo, a body moving faster than any good reason, crossing the gate and pausing at the step to listen to its own patience. The knocker did not move. The thing did not need it to. I asked the last honest question. If I open, who stays outside? The woman smiled until her smile hurt my eyes to see. She placed her palm on the glass and left a print that swallowed mine. Ethan, said the pipes, kind now. The roof accepted weight and held it. The mirror handed my reflection back to me with the eyes still yellow. I stood at the door and set my ear to the wood. Breath moved on the other side, slow, patient, confident in old debts in their collection. I unlocked the chain. The lion's mouth held the ring steady, polite. I set my hand on the knob and felt a second hand to set on top of mine, warm, the pads rough, the nails almost careful. I spoke the word that cost least to lose and most to keep. No. The breath on the other side did not retreat. It waited with the long calm of forests. The knocker did not fall. It rose, as if hands held it from beneath. The house opened something else in answer. Window, mirror, throat, pipe, until the silence lapped around my ankles. The clock stayed at 11:11. The woman watched me with the patience of a winter that has learned my name and decided to keep it. Somewhere over the college roofs, a howl braided itself into the rain. It sounded like metal learning to be animal. It sounded like a door learning a new language for welcome.